Well, since the theme of the blog this week is drawing cars, I thought I'd do a little cartoon Volkswagen Beetle. So draw along with me. You can use anything, pencils, colored pencils, pastels, and that's actually kind of what I'll be drawing with. I'm using digital software. Procreate is the name of the software. It only works with an iPad, but it imitates pastels really well. So what I'll be doing here will work with soft pastels, chalks, and so just get your materials out, whatever you have, and let's have some fun together. Now, as you've noticed, I've already started drawing, and what I'm doing here is I'm just identifying shapes. And that's one way to draw something complex, is to look at it and see what shapes you see. So I've seen 4 sort of rectangles. Those are the tires. And I've got 2 sidewise teardrop shapes here that are the front bumpers. So, the next shape is the hood, and that's kind of a triangle. And we've got 2 circles, obviously the headlights. If you look at any object, you can see what shapes make it up. And it does often make it easier to draw things. You see, I've got a couple extra triangles here on the hood. And now here, I call this a rectangle. It's probably more truly an oval, but it's kind of halfway in between. It doesn't have sharp corners, but that's the windshield. And of course, over that is going to be the roof of the car. You'll be able to download this image from this page. So go ahead and download it and print it out, and find those shapes yourself. Here's the luggage rack, and it's again kind of a rectangle, sort of, maybe a trapezoid. And then we have the front bumper, and then 2 little vertical rectangles that are also part of the bumper there. So those are the basic shapes that we're going to work with in drawing our little cartoon. And that's your first step, is to take some time, identify the shapes that you're going to draw, whether it's a Volkswagen Beetle or some other car. I'm turning off the background layers now, and I'm going to start drawing. Whenever I draw with pastels, I always like to draw with a dark surface, and that's true even when I'm working digitally. So I'm going to start out with kind of a light blue, and I'm going to draw those teardrop shapes first. And the reason I started with those is because those are really the most unique feature of this particular drawing or design. So now if you're working with pastels, what I would probably do, I would do this part, the outlines, all of the outlines, I would do either in a real light pencil, or you could draw it with your chalks, but don't put a lot of pressure down, because you may want to adjust the size and things like that. So I've got my teardrop shapes. I overlap them a little bit, and that's on purpose. And so the next step is just to fill it in. And again, it's pretty much the same thing that you're going to do with regular pastels or chalks, or colored pencil or crayon or whatever. Just fill in the outline. And if you're working with chalks, don't put a ton of pressure down, because the more chalk you get on the paper, the harder it is to put anything else on top of it. And as you're going to see as we go along, the process is normally you start dark and get lighter, and that's going to be true pretty much all the way through here. So you're going to start with a dark color, and then we'll come back in and define it more with lighter colors. So these are my rectangles for the tires, and the one in back on the left side isn't as big because, one, of the angle that we're seeing it, and 2, it's a little bit in perspective. And on the right side, if you look at the photo, you can just barely see it, see that second tire. So I'm just putting a little lighter pressure, and not really putting much there at all, just enough to separate it. Okay, well, let's go to a different color for the hood. So I'm gonna shift over to kind of a purplish color, and I don't really like that. That's a little bit dark, so let's lighten that up just a little bit. Now, if you're working with pastels, you may not always have the biggest choice of colors, depending on how big a set you have. So just try to choose what works. And incidentally, I'm using different colors here. One, to make it bright and fun and interesting, but also because I want you to see the different shapes that I'm using to draw the picture. So basically, you can choose whatever colors you want here. You can keep it all the same color, or you can be creative and just throw in a lot of different colors just for the fun of it. So I've drawn in my triangular shape, or more actually almost like a pie shape, because that rounded top. And I'm filling it out just a little bit to bring it a little bit more out over those bumpers, or fenders, not bumpers. Okay, so we've got that part done. Now we're going to change colors again. Oh, forgot it's a little bit big, so I'm going to shrink it down. That's one of the nice things working digitally. If I draw too big for my drawing surface, I can just go in and make it a little smaller or reposition it. And this particular software imitates chalk better than any. I've found every kind of digital software has its own strengths and weaknesses, and Procreate is just excellent for chalk. If you want to practice realistic chalk techniques, the only downside is it only works on either an iPad or an iPhone. And so that is a downside, because it's not cross-platform like all of the other ones that I use are. Okay, so I've put the windshield in, and I'm actually combining the windshield and the roof in this shape, and then I'll come back in with another color to define the windshield a little bit more in a little bit more detail. But I want to put the luggage rack on next, so I'm just going to draw a couple lines. Have moved kind of a yellow-orange here, and I'm going to come across the top, and again color in that quasi-rectangular shape. Okay, so those are my basic shapes for my cartoon Volkswagen Beetle. It's not going to end up looking like a real Volkswagen Beetle. I'm just trying to use that as sort of the foundation or the base for what I want to draw. Okay, next step. Let's go in to that hood again and add those extra triangles that we identified. So I'm going back with a little different color. This one is a little bit lighter. And you'll notice that anytime you work with pastels, you are going to, again, start dark and work light. And so you put in your base coat or your base color, and then you're going to come up and add and define detail more with a lighter color or a lighter value. This is, again, sort of a lavender color almost. And it may look different depending on what you're watching it on, but on my computer monitor, it's a lavender color. So I'm going to fill those triangles in, and when I'm happy with those, it will be time to move on to the next step. So the next step is going to be the windshield. So let's, again, choose a little lighter color. I'm going to stay in that magenta pink color, but I'm lightening it up so I can draw my windshield in there. And just filling that in real quickly. Now, I don't do any real blending in this particular drawing, but again, this I keep wanting to say art rage, but this Procreate software is really amazing when you do try to blend with it, and it works almost exactly like chalk, but without the dust. Okay, I've gone to just an off-white, kind of a bright bluish white, and I've drawn in 2 circles for the headlights, which will eventually become the eyes of my cartoon. And I'm gonna use that same color for the front bumper. And, again, we're still following that same, uh, going from darker value to lighter value. And, it's always interesting with cars to see how naturally they almost look like faces when when you put them together and when you draw them. So we've practically got a face here already in this little drawing of our Volkswagen Beetle. Okay, another rectangle makes the rear view mirror, and actually is another rectangle attaches the rear view mirror to the car. Now I'm going to come back in, and I'm coming dark again, and that's just because I'm adding in a little bit of definition. Again, normally I said dark to light, but here I'm just putting in kind of an outline to separate, because the on that hood, the blue and the lavender are almost the exact same value. All right, let's add a little bit to our headlights to make them look like eyes. And I'm throwing in some eyebrows there. And I'm going to put a little line there to indicate a smiling face. You could do that also with the bumper itself. Use the bumper as the mouth. And the little handle in the middle of the hood makes a pretty good nose, actually. Okay, now I'm coming in now with just some lighter values and hitting some of the edges of the car, just to, again, give it a little bit more of a detail. I'm not really trying to be too concerned about where my light's coming from, things like that. This is just to kind of give it a little bit more of a finished look with some of the highlighting that I'm doing here at the end. As I wrap this up, and we're almost done, just get you some pastels out, colored pencils, crayons, and try this for yourself. You can download the images just below and have some fun. I'll be back with a new picture next week.